Hello, hi. Sorry, I'm looking a bit of a mess today. How are we all doing? I say we all because there's literally two of you. But hey, I'm Gigi, and I am an ex-Amazon bar raiser and hiring manager, and a co-founder of Day One Careers, which I assume you know because if you're here on YouTube, then you've seen loads of videos of me with multiple different hairstyles over the years. So this is my current look. So this is our usual Friday. No, it's not Friday. I wish it was Friday. God, that was such wishful thinking. Our usual Monday session. I don't think Yevgeny's going to make it today. He's with his wife at a medical appointment. It usually takes people a little bit of time to arrive after the session goes live. So I'll prattle on a little bit for those of you who are here to just kind of give you an intro into how I got into this game. And then we can get going with the questions. I'm here for up to an hour, but if we don't have enough people at the session to cover an hour, then we'll just run through whatever you guys need me to cover off for you. And then you can all go and finish your day elsewhere. So, how did I get into this? Right. So, when I was working at Amazon, I was, as I mentioned, a bar raiser. It took me a while to qualify as a bar raiser, and I've got a very boring video about how bar raisers are made. Is that the right term? I don't know. But I did hundreds and hundreds of interviews. And whilst I was interviewing, I started to pick up on things that people were doing that were just a little strange, but it was consistent strange things, which is even weirder, right? Different people who in theory should never have crossed paths with each other were doing very similar things that I thought were peculiar. So I decided I would just ask people where they got that particular idea to do it that way from, and they all pointed me towards YouTube. At the time, there were only a couple of channels on YouTube talking about Amazon interview preparation. I know there's like bazillions now. Bazillions. I don't even know if that's not even a number, is it? But you know what I mean. So there were only a couple. So I did a bit of digging into those channels, and I discovered that at least one of those people who was running this channel had never worked at Amazon in their entire lives. And they were obviously getting their information secondhand, and something must have been getting lost in translation because some of the things that they were talking about just were not true in any way and could potentially cause candidates to fail their interview. The other people, although they had definitely worked at Amazon before, they had worked in very particular parts of Amazon, both geographically and at a skills level, which meant although the things they were sharing weren't wrong, they weren't necessarily universally true for everybody. So people were getting confused and making wrong choices because of that. Because I had, as a bar raiser, a very broad experience, I know you can obviously hear my very clear RP English accent, but I did actually bar raise across the globe. I wasn't jumping on planes, but rather I was dialing in to calls and across Europe, the US, North America, and South America, the Antipodeans with our Aussies and our Kiwi colleagues in the AWS. I basically bar raised around the world and on all sorts of different job families. As a bar raiser, you don't have to be bar raising on your own job family. So although I'm a marketer by trade, I would have bar raised on software development engineers, lawyers, procurement people, product managers, program managers, fulfillment center, pre-construction managers. Some guy was doing some kind of what's the word? I can't even think of the word now. The word's left me. Anyway, broad experience, which meant I had a much more rounded view of what the Amazon interview process looks like, where it is completely consistent and where there are deviations. So I just set up my own YouTube channel because I just couldn't bear the fact that people were getting bad advice. Started to build out videos, and if you've been through the whole channel, you'll know the older videos. They're a bit, I have to be honest, they're a little bit naff now, like 5 years old. Sound quality was terrible, camera was grainy, they're horrendous, but actually the content is still really good, so I don't like to delete them. But did lots of content. Amazon themselves loved it. I was getting not promoted as in job, but in terms of marketing promotion, internally by lots of different recruiters. They were all recommending their candidates go and look at that channel when they were prepping. Once I left Amazon, I continued on with building out the channel, and I thought maybe there was an opportunity to use my skills and experience to try and help people get jobs at Amazon a little bit more easily. The other people that were out there were charging very, very premium prices for people to get their services with their coaching. I honestly thought that was grossly unfair and that people were being priced out. So I just decided that I would make something that was much more scalable. So I did a whole bunch of digital videos so people could then coach themselves whatever time of the day, etc. Cross paths with Yevgeny, and I won't go into his story too much because he's not here to speak about himself, but I crossed paths with Yevgeny, who was then working at Apple but had previously worked at Amazon. And we decided that we would work really well together as a team, and we set up Day One Careers. So here we are. We've been running for a few years now as Day One Careers. What we like to do is offer these live sessions to you folks. So if there are questions that you have that are perhaps not covered by the YouTube channel, then we're here to try and answer them for you. So that's going to be the focus of this session. What you're going to be able to do is put any question you like here in the box on the right-hand side, and I will do my best to answer that question. A couple of bits of housekeeping, which I'll try and trot through. On the one end of the extreme, if you just have like a general, I'm interviewing tomorrow or whenever, Gigi, can you give me some tips? I got a whole channel full of tips for you, and I could easily spend the same 15 hours talking to you here with all of my tips as is covered off in the channel. So if you really just have that general question, please go to the channel first, or at the end, I'll tell you somewhere you can go where you can use a chat bot that we've developed that is basically fed on the content from the channel rather than scroll through all the videos themselves. Not that they're not fabulous videos, of course they are, but the chatbot might be just a quicker process for you. So if it's general guidance you're looking for, go to the YouTube channel or wait until I talk to you about this chatbot where you can find the chatbot. On the other extreme, if you have very specific questions about the functional aspects of your interview, and by functional, I mean not the leadership principle questions, but anything anybody might ask you about your particular skill set. If you have specific questions about what you might be tested on if you're a software development engineer, or what you might be tested on if you were a supply chain manager, that I cannot cover off for you. There are probably over 10,000 different job families now in Amazon across all of their businesses, and no one person is going to be able to tell you what exactly you can expect from a functional point of view across 10,000 different job families. So if that is your question, I'm afraid you're going to be disappointed because I'm not going to be able to cover those off. Anything in between those two extremes, I will be able to make a good attempt at answering for you. So please do write your questions down here on the bar on what is the right-hand side for me. I don't know if it is for you. There are character limits. So if you're banging away and you realize you've come to the end of the character limit, don't panic. All you need to do is just delete the last letter, put a little 1 there so I know that there's now going to be another question that I need to search for lower down in the stack. And just keep writing and hitting the maximum count until you get to the very end of the question that you have, and then I'll be able to pull them all together. Okay, so with that said, there's only a couple of you here today. I'm feeling a bit lonely. It's very quiet at this time of year, actually. I know that Amazon have put some hiring freezes out there at the moment. So it is a bit quiet for us, but we'll see. Whatever questions you people have, I'll answer. And then when we're done, we're done. So we have a few people joining us from LinkedIn, which is great. It's good to see LinkedIn back on. We weren't connected to LinkedIn for a while. So Mohammed Syed, let's just pull you up. My question is, Amazon provides silent rejection. I applied for a position in Luxembourg from 1 month ago and didn't get any response. Okay, so your question is, do Amazon provide a silent rejection? Got it. No, they shouldn't do. I mean, the process should be anyone that applies should get, even if they're going to be rejected, an automated email essentially that tells them that their application isn't being taken forward. What that essentially requires is the recruiter to review your resume, or this is Luxembourg, so review your CV and then make a decision to either move your application on or reject it. And they literally have to click a button on your profile to do one or the other of those. My guess is that if you've been waiting a month, either somehow the recruiter has missed your particular application, you're somewhat lingering away, or actually they might just have had to move on from that particular role and put their focus somewhere else, and they've got all of these CVs stacking up waiting to be reviewed as soon as they're able to turn their attention back. So I wouldn't assume that no response is a rejection. It might just be they haven't yet got around to making the decision to move you forward or not. That said, obviously move on with your life. You can't assume anything at this point. So I'd say forget about it, not in such that you're obviously not moving through, but rather park it as a concern, get on with your life, keep applying for other roles, etc. Keep moving forward with other things. And then if they eventually come back to you, then great, bonus. Hope that helps. Okay. Okay, so this LinkedIn user is saying, I'm just today learning about bar raisers in the context of recruiting. Thank you already. No worries. So if you go to my channel, there is, I think there's a couple of videos on there that talk specifically about bar raisers. I think one is about how one ends up as a bar raiser. Another one is kind of what bar raisers are looking for. Another thing is what bar raisers actually do in the entire end-to-end process. So if you want to dive a little bit deeper into what bar raising looks like, go check out the videos on the channel. Good luck with your interview. I assume you're interviewing, and that's why you're learning about bar raisers. Oh, Golden Buddy. Oh, man, that is such a cute pic. I love people's profile pictures. I have a very similar one of my German Shepherd. Everybody who has, I'm going to see if I can find it. How sad, I know, share pictures of our animals. Everyone who has a dog has a picture like that, don't they? Let's be honest. All right, so I will attempt to answer your question whilst I'm attempting to find this picture of my dog so I can show you how cute my dog is. Right, so how do you find stories? I know it's a very broad question, but I struggle to find stories. Okay. I have in total 18 years of technical experience as a core developer. Right. And then you moved into a TAM role. Okay. So I do have a video. I'm lucking out here. I usually have so many pictures of my dog, so I'll abandon it now. I do have a video on the YouTube channel, which is called, I think it's 10 steps for interview preparation. So I'm going to give you my answer now, and then I'm going to recommend you go check out that particular video because it really does walk you through step by step by step by step how to get from nothing all the way through to stories. Ostensibly, the best way to find stories is the best way to develop stories is twofold because actually different people kind of approach it differently. The first way to do it is think about all of the best experiences in your career, all of the things that you're really, really proud of, and just do an overview, write down kind of what happened in that particular situation. Once you've done that, look at all of the leadership principles and wrap your head around what those leadership principles are and what they mean and what they are all about. Having wrapped your head around the leadership principles, basically connect, those kind of like when you draw a line between two things, connect the leadership principle that you think your story has the strongest aspects of. In business, there will be leadership principles in every story, right? Because you don't just earn people's trust in a particular story. You might also take some ownership. You may also have to dive deep. But what you want to do is think about what the dominant leadership principle is in that particular situation, and then write your story with much more focus on the dominant aspect leadership principle of that story and making it the heart of your story. Once you run out, or if you don't have any idea whatever in terms of the types of situations that you want to turn into stories, the other way is to start with the leadership principles. Really go through them essentially one by one. So really, really study. I'm just going to pull earn trust out of the air. Really, really study earn trust. Really, really think about all of the different aspects of earn trust. We have an amazing course ourselves that we've deconstructed all of this stuff, but I'll give you some data about that a bit later. But ostensibly, you need to find a way to really, really understand the leadership principle of earned trust. Once you've really understood the leadership of earned trust and the different facets that are within it, because there are multiple ways into each of the leadership principles, you then have to ask yourself, do I have any situations from my career history that sound like that leadership principle or that facet of leadership principle. And you use the leadership principle to guide you back in time, or that way, whichever way this timeline is going, to guide you back in time and identify situations from your career past that seem like that particular leadership principle or facet of that leadership principle. So you're either working forwards or working backwards, whichever way you want to have a think about it, in terms of either starting with your best experiences and trying to map leadership principles to it, or really becoming familiar with the leadership principles and trying to use that understanding to trigger memories of particular projects that you've done in the past that seem to bias towards that particular leadership principle. So I hope that helps. Again, your dog is just ridiculously adorable. Hope that helps. I will again suggest when we finish this session, do go back to the YouTube channel and try and find that 10 steps for Amazon interview preparation. I think you'll find that super helpful. Okay, let's move on to the next one. I represent students EIC. I don't know what EIC is. Maybe it's not fundamental for me to know what that is as I read through the rest of the question. So I don't have a specific interview question. I do have a serious inquiry. Okay. Do you have any suggestions? Okay. On how I get our exceptional grads in front of university recruiter? I've tried LinkedIn. I've tried calling Handshake. The list goes on. Um, so your students need to just apply for the graduate program at Amazon. There's no limits on what grads can apply from what schools. Now, Amazon does have specific schools that they have particular relationships with, and I've done it myself, go to those particular schools and interview the graduates who we want to interview, who have submitted their application, and a short list is taken, and then we go to those schools. Don't know if that happens anymore and whether that dried up from COVID, but you don't need to introduce your grads to a particular university recruiter. Your grads need to apply to the university program, the graduate program, and you can just look at the Amazon jobs page for that information. But the reason why you're not getting kind of contact directly with a grad recruiter is that's not the way they do it. Your grads need to apply to the program. It's as simple as that, really. Okay. Oh, this is Golden Buddy again. Okay, so I think I covered off this next part of your question, so I'm going to move on. Christina, how dare you? You're right. In case anyone's wondering, someone called Christina has decided to drop into my live and advertise her services. So, Christina, really, I think you can do better than that. So, let's kind of lift our moral basis a little bit higher, Christina, and try and find your own customers. Okay, bye. Right. So, whoop, up. No, go away, Christina. How do I get rid of you? I don't even know how to get rid of you. Woo. Used to be able to kick people off. What's going on here? I don't know why I can't kick Christina off, but there we go. I'm a bit thrown by that. How dare they? Honestly. Right. Moving on, people. Sai Siddhartha. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so gonna butcher your name. Very sorry if I butcher your name. Please apologize to your parents for me. I did not mean to do that to you. So, right. So, Sai, thanks for all the videos. You are more than welcome. They're helping a lot. Good. I'm pleased to hear it. I have a loop interview coming up. And what is the chance of asking simple questions like strength, weaknesses? Tell me about it. Right. And you're saying you've got a loop coming up. Okay. So, tell me about yourself and why Amazon are really only questions that are covered off in the early rounds. The reason why that is in the early rounds, they're just trying to get a sense of who you are, what you do, and how well you are aligned to this particular role. So once you've been through the first round and you are moving on to the loop, they've done that. They really don't need to know that information again. You've covered it off with the first interviewer, you're done with it. So my recommendation would be, when it comes to loop, if they ask you, they tell me about yourself, or why are you here, just give them a shortened version, because really the loop and the decisions made at loop are all based on the behavioral interview questions. So you want to get to those behavioral interview questions, or the functional questions if you've got particularly functional or technical questions coming up. If you want to get to those as quickly as possible so you can provide as much data as possible for the data that they actually use to make decisions. So I wouldn't worry too much about tell me about yourself. So in terms of questions like strengths and weaknesses, okay, so they are not meant to be questions that are asked by Amazonians, because they don't align to a specific leadership principle. What leadership principle can you think of that aligns to the concept of strength? What leadership principle can you think of that aligns to the concept of weakness? None, right? So the data gathering that they do at an Amazon interview is to try and understand how you behave, your performance against the leadership principles that they really care about. So in theory, no one should be asking you questions about tell me about your strength or tell me about your weaknesses. But of course, what people are supposed to do is often not what people actually do. So I cannot promise you that no one will ever ask you these somewhat more generic questions. So, with that in mind, my guidance on this would be, if you are asked the strengths or weaknesses question, what you really want to do, particularly the weaknesses question, is, and I do have a video about this on the YouTube channel, I recommend to people that, actually, I'm going to get rid of Christina, otherwise Christina's going to steal all my insight. How do we get rid of Christina? Honestly, bringing her up and dropping her down, and ugh, I don't know what's happened here. This is super strange. Maybe because it's LinkedIn. Ah, I know what I have to do. I'm coming for you, Christina. I'm coming. I have to open it up on LinkedIn to get rid of Christina, I think. So, which I'm going to do, because I am not spilling my secrets to Christina. I'm sorry, people. This is wild. I've never had this before. Show all. There we go. I'm a coming. Mhm. Sorry, folks. I know must be a real pain in the bottom to be listening to this. So there we go. Christina Smith. There we are, Christina. There she goes. Bye, Christina. There we go. Right. So where was I? Right. So my recommendation is, if anybody asks you about your weakness, don't try and make it one of those weaknesses that aren't really weaknesses, because everybody sees through that. The reality is we all have weaknesses, and there's no reason to be ashamed of that. My strategy is to talk about weakness as a counterpoint to a strength. So what, for example, you might say is, my key weakness is sometimes I struggle to actually finish a project. The reason why I struggle to finish a project is because I have such high standards. I always want to make sure that it is as perfect as possible. So you've been honest about your weakness, but you've demonstrated that it's come out of a really, really powerful strength. And then to finish it off, what you say is, but I am aware of that. And you talk about the strategies that you've been using to mitigate that issue. So rather than just some kind of weak strength, some weak weakness that actually you're trying to present as a strength, which everybody sees through, you are very honest about a true weakness, but you make it sound positive because it's a consequence of a true strength. And then you show you're working on it. Obviously, if someone asks you about your strengths, you're not going to talk about your weaknesses. But if I was giving you guidance on how you should answer, look to the leadership principles for how to answer it. I wouldn't quote the leadership principles verbatim. because then obviously they see through it. But think of another way to talk about, say, the ownership leadership principle, or think about another way to talk about the dive deep leadership principle, and then tell them that is your strength and give them an alternative way of describing it. So they make the connection and it doesn't look like you've just been lazy and pulled out a specific leadership principle. Probably aim to use the job description as your guide, right? So you can probably see from the job description, I'll put your question back up here once, now that we've got rid of Christina. Go back to the job description and you'll be able to see the types of things they say they're looking for, right? Look the whole way through the job description and see how many times they talk about the same type of behaviors, so has to be able to collaborate, has to coordinate, has to be able to manage in a matrix organization. All of those things are about earning trust. So if you can see that type of theme coming out really heavily in the job description, if someone does ask you about your strength, that's the theme that you want to lean towards. I hope that helps, I'm sorry about all of the messing about there with Christina. Let's move you and move on. What does bar raising questions look? Okay, right, got it. Hi, I have no way. Oh, I'm not going to try your name at all because I know I'll butcher it and I hate butchering people's names. So apologies for not saying your name. If you want to, you can tell me how to pronounce it phonetically below, but I don't mean to be rude, so I do apologize. So what does the bar raising question look like for non-tech roles, like for recruiters / internal people operations team? They look like every other question that any interviewer is going to ask you. Everybody uses the same interview question bank to ask you their questions from. Or if they don't want to use the Amazon interview question bank, which they don't have to, they'll make up their own questions. But the bar raiser isn't going to ask you any different questions to anybody else. The bar raiser's job is multifold. There's jobs that they do behind the scenes, kind of admin stuff, internal facing stuff, but we won't bother with that. Their job when it comes to you and the assessment of you is to review all of the data shared by every single person who has interviewed you in the loop. And through the analysis of that data, they will then either approve or not approve your hire whilst coordinating with other people in the loop itself. So no specific bar raiser questions, no specific follow-up questions from bar raisers, nothing specific that bar raisers are looking for that other people are not looking for in your interview, okay? So you basically have to treat everybody like they are the bar raiser, because whatever you say to any interviewer is going to make it back to the bar raiser, either because that interviewer is going to tell the bar raiser and everybody else, or the bar raiser is going to read the notes written by that interviewer. Hope that makes sense. Okay, this is a good question to ask. So, could I ask, what do bar raising candidates have in common where others don't? How do their answers different? Okay, so a couple of things, probably 3 things I would call out that are the critical things that people that get hired, bar raising candidates add, that others who don't get hired perhaps don't add quite so much of. So the first thing is around significance and impact. Maybe that's 2 things, I don't know, but significance and impact. And by that I mean, when they set up their situation, if you're assuming we use the STAR model, when they set up the situation, they make sure that they are very, very clear at explaining the significance of that problem or that opportunity to the interviewer. They're really good at making sure that the interviewer understands that this thing is really important to their organization. And if they hadn't picked it up or done something with it, the organization would be missing out on something significant or would be seeing a significant negative impact. So that's the first thing, significance. The second thing then, or connected to the first thing, is impact. You need to make sure that when you are explaining the results of your activities, that you are very clear on the impact it has had on your organization. That impact doesn't need to be at the order of magnitude that Amazon would see impact on. Lots of people worry about my numbers are much smaller, they're never going to be impressed about it at Amazon. You don't need to worry about that. The impact needs to be relative to what good looks like in that organization. So when you're describing, and I'm just going to do a sales analogy here because it's just easier. So pretending someone's a salesperson, they managed to generate $2.5 million in revenue, which maybe to an AWS a salesperson would mean nothing. But if they're working in a small slash medium organization, maybe $2.5 million is meaningful. So if they want to make sure the impact of that $2.5 million is clear, they would say, okay, as a result of this deal, I generated $2.5 million of revenue, which actually represents the top 5% of deals done by my company in that year. Great. So now somebody in Amazon understands the true impact. The true impact is not necessarily just the 2.5 million. The true impact of that person is to achieve a deal that's in the top 5% of all deals made by that company in that year. Okay. So those two things are really, really important when it comes to making clear that you are a bar raising candidate. Next thing to think about then is learnings slash improvements. So I don't know if you have seen the video on the channel, which is about the STAR model. I add an I to the end of the STAR model and call it the STAR-E model. So people that really differentiate themselves as high potential performers in Amazon are people who can be reflective of their own performance. So candidates who are able to go through their stories and then at the end of their stories do some proper self-reflection about their own performance and where their own performance could have been better, or where they have learned something very specific that they need to change operationally or mechanistically, that's the right word, mechanistically, moving forward to improve their outputs, that they share that with the interviewer. Do not use high level philosophical things. Oh, I learned the importance of communication. Oh, I learned that it's really important to have data. These are not true learnings, because if you didn't know those things before you kind of started with that story, then why the hell is anyone employing you in the first place? They really have to be personal reflections. I learned that I should always keep a really tight record of everybody who has approved something, rather than just relying on an agreement over the phone. So from now on, I have created a form that everybody has to tick a box on before I am willing to move forward, or something along those lines. So that's the next thing that really differentiates the high growth potential people who will then get hired versus the people who do not get hired. Is there anything else? Yes, final thing, complexity. So depending on what level you're interviewing at, obviously the type of complexity and the level of complexity that in your experience is going to be different. But essentially, Amazon is always looking for people who are working on the most complex projects relative to the level that they're operating at. So if you want to be considered to be bar raising, you have to explain the complexity of the work that you did. It needs to be explained simply, but you're trying to articulate that you work on complex things that are hard. You need a simple story that narrates a complex problem and solution. If you can nail all of those things, that's essentially, on my point of view anyway, the things that differentiate the people that do get hired versus the people that don't. I hope that helps. Okay. Honestly. Anyway, sorry. Distracted. Okay, so when we pick our strongest examples and they are not the most recent, is that a challenge? Okay, good question. Should we look at most recent and strongest LP answers, or is it okay to forego one of these? Brilliant question. Okay, this is really important and a question that a lot of people have. So you have to make a decision. There's no actual right answer to this. So let me just talk through the thinking here. The reason why Amazon likes more recent examples is because using data from their past, your past, they're trying to predict the future. If you've done something in your more recent past, they can have much higher confidence that you are going to do that in the recent future or the near future to come. If you have to go back quite a long time to pick up an example of something, they're going to be asking themselves, why has she had to go so far back in time to find a strong example of earned trust? She must not consistently be strong at earned trust if she's had to go so far back in time. Okay, that's the theory. However, they are looking for strong examples of those particular leadership principles. And in some cases, your really strongest example, the situation happened to be a number of years ago, which gave you that opportunity to demonstrate that strength. So you have to decide whether that story X period ago is so impressive and so kind of fundamental to demonstrating your brilliance in this particular leadership principle that it's worth the sacrifice of going that much further back in time. No one can tell you the right answer here. You have to make a judgment. I will give you an illustration from when I was interviewed at Amazon because I had the same debate with myself. I took an example that was 10 years old, right? A long time. Usually we would recommend people go no further than 5, maybe 7 years, but I chose 10. And the reason I chose 10 is the question was, tell me about a time where you disagreed with your manager on something you deemed to be important for the business. I think it was a have backbone, disagree and commit story. I chose a story where I, 10 years ago, as a pretty junior marketing manager, disagreed heavily with the CEO of my organization. I was working at British Telecom at the time, which I guess is the equivalent of AT&T or something like that. Belcom in the US, I don't know exactly where you're based, but big global telecoms organization. And I disagreed with the CEO of the consumer side of that organization on a marketing campaign. I was a very lowly junior marketing manager and he was the CEO. And I decided I would use that story because it was really a fundamental demonstration of who I am as a person. I don't care how senior you are, I don't care how important you are. If I fundamentally believe something is not right, I will say it. So that's why I chose to take that 10-year jump back in time, because it was a really extreme demonstration of my strength in that particular leadership principle. So you can use that as a kind of a litmus test for the story that you want to come up with. But I would recommend, if you do go back far that in time, you have to really believe that it's such a strong demonstration of that leadership principle within your DNA that it's going to balance out the fact that you've had to go back 10 years for it, or 8 years, or whatever it is. I hope that helps. Okay. Okay. Hey, Prachi. So you recently took our interview success system and used our AI tools. Fine. But you were unsuccessful in the loop. Any ideas or suggestions of what changes in strategy I need to do? Okay, Prachi. So without actually speaking with you myself and knowing how you implemented our advice, I have nothing for you, I'm afraid. So I would need to do some kind of mock interview with you and get an understanding of how you've implemented our advice. The other thing to say, Prachi, is sometimes you did everything right. I know people struggle to get their heads around this, and it sounds so counterintuitive that you could have possibly done everything right, but not get the role. It is possible. Sometimes, even though you do really well, you put yourself in the best possible light, you perhaps didn't have quite the right functional skills for the role. Or it might be that you absolutely excelled in a particular set of leadership principles and were kind of average on another set of leadership principles, but actually it was that other set of leadership principles that they were really interested in and really needed someone to excel in. So you did a great job. You definitely showed where you excelled. But unfortunately, for those people, they weren't looking for someone who excelled in that area. They were looking for someone that excelled in that area. So it isn't necessarily that you did anything wrong. It just wasn't the right role for you. It just didn't go your way. And I think, folks, we need to think about this when we are concerned about feedback and not receiving feedback off the back of an interview. Quite often, the feedback that you would get on the back of an interview will be utterly useless for any other interview, because the only type of feedback that's useful for interviews is feedback about how you presented your story, or is feedback about, I don't know, at Amazon, it wouldn't be about body language, or it shouldn't be anything about like that. But the only things that are useful is basically presentation type information. Anything that's specific to the role, not really going to be able to apply that feedback anywhere else. So if you aren't successful on a particular role, I would say the first stop is going to be, okay, have I done mock interviews? Do I really know how well I have applied the information that I have learnt? I can do that for you, obviously, with pleasure, Prachi. But without knowing how you've implemented that information at this point, I'm afraid I can't make any other suggestion. But even if we did do a mock, I might still come out and say, I thought that was a really good answer, because it's very possible that you gave great answers, but not necessarily the greatest answers in the area that it cared the most about. I'm afraid there is quite a bit of luck associated with getting a job, but I'm sure you all know that. Okay. Golden Buddy. Um, I've always worked at Microsoft. Okay. Oh, in Microsoft Technologies. Okay. Will Amazon still be interested in interviewing me for TAM roles? How do I sell the story with no AWS background? Yeah, I have coached loads of people who are coming to Amazon with a background in Microsoft Technologies who haven't got experience in the AWS stack. It's not really about the current knowledge set that you have, it's about your transferable skills. So I would see no reason, based on my experience of prepping plenty of people who have focused on Microsoft solutions, I see no reason why they wouldn't be interested in you. Obviously, it's not my area of expertise. I'm not an AWS recruiter, blah, blah, blah. But all I can say is I have coached plenty of people who are making that leap from one to the other. Can't see any reason why it would be any different for you. Right. I have the loop interview coming up for a or for a VM. Okay. During the interview, the recruiter mentioned that the role is available. L4 and L5. What would be a good tactic to negotiate L5? You can't negotiate L5. You have to demonstrate L5. So if you think about the answer that I gave about kind of what you see in people who are bar raising and therefore get the job, those are the things that you're going to want to make sure that you introduce into your answers so that you can demonstrate to them you are at the more senior level. You can't negotiate it, you have to prove evidence of it. If you prove evidence of it, they would offer you the L5 position. No one is going to offer someone a more junior position than they're actually capable of, because even if they take it, they'll get really bored and tired and unhappy very, very quickly, and they'll move on. And there's nothing a hiring manager wants to do less than backfill someone that they've only just hired. So focus your efforts on developing those stories, adding in all the things I talked about earlier, the other things that really differentiate the people who gets jobs versus the people who don't. And that should be your focus if you're going to aim for that L5. Good luck. Okay. Gabriela, okay, from Brazil. I want to go to Brazil. I'm desperate to go to Brazil. It just looks like such a colourful place. I'm from dreary old London where it's always cloudy, so Brazil seems very exotic to me. Oh, well, it's a pleasure to have you. Oh, you got a job offer. Oh, oh, congratulations. I wasn't expecting that. I was waiting for the question to come. That's amazing news. I am absolutely delighted for you. Congratulations. And I wish you a fabulous Amazon career. I shall put you back in. Let's see what Jeff has to say. Hi, Jeff. Some of your experiences that are applicable to my upcoming interview from several years. Okay. I don't have the exact data to back up my results. How do I present realistic results without data? Right. Okay. This is a tough one, and plenty of people face this problem. So I'm going to tell you how to deal with it now, and then I'm going to tell you how to avoid it in the future. Okay. So, how to deal with it now, I would suggest provide them with estimates. Be very clear that they're estimates, but based on the type of work that you've done before and the project, all of the other projects that you've done before, come up with some kind of an estimate as to what the impact was. You can use a fixed estimate about, approximately 2.5 million, going back to the analogy I used earlier, or somewhere between 1.8 and 2.5. I'm sorry, it was a long time ago and I do not have the absolute data. Amazon, yes, they do want the data, but they want the data for two reasons. Number one, so that they can see the scale of your impact. So if you remember what I said earlier, contextualize that range of 1.8 to 2.5. That would put it somewhere in the top 10% GG of all of the sales done in my company in that year. The context is important when it comes to the data. The other thing they want data for is to make sure that you are a data-centric person. Amazonians are all data-centric people. They think about opportunities and achievements in the context of data and analysis. So by making sure that you present things like significance and impact in your stories, even if they're not exact, you are still demonstrating that you are a data-centric person. So that would be my advice. Come up with something that seems plausible and be clear to them that you are approximating or estimating, because if they start to pick it apart and it's an approximation, you'll then get into all sorts of trouble. So that is how to deal with it now. How to avoid it in the future. So this is the best advice that no one ever gave me in my career. And I'm sharing it with you now, and everyone here really needs to take note of this advice. You will all be facing these types of behavioral questions for the foreseeable future. Maybe you will be dealing with a human being. Maybe you'll end up having to deal with AI, God forbid. But somebody is going to be asking you to talk about experiences of the past. Because you know that's going to happen, you know that you don't want to rely on your memory, because otherwise you get into Jeff's position here. And quite frankly, Jeff, like, you're one many people. It's not, I don't mean to pick on you specifically, Jeff. The point being is many people come up with this problem, which is we all work so hard, we do our jobs and we just move on and we just keep moving on. And a lot of this memory is just lost to us. So what I strongly recommend you do is at the end of every single month, take a good hour and make it an unmovable hour. You know, those types of hours where it doesn't matter what else anyone's asking you, unless someone's dying, that slot is for this particular task. Take that hour and document any projects you've completed in that month. Document everything that you can remember and think about that particular project. Be careful if anything's confidential. Obviously, we don't want to be documenting confidential information and then sending it to ourselves for our company. But if it's not confidential, document it. Document it somewhere safe for you. You don't want to document it on a work laptop or a work cloud solution, because you may not be working there in 15 years' time when you're going to need this information. So put it somewhere safe in a personal space, avoiding taking anything that is confidential to your company. And do that every single month. So then if you come to a job interview, even if it's in 5 or 6 years' time, you don't need to remember anything, because past you has done you a massive favor and documented all of that information. So hopefully that helps you out there, Jeff. I'm just going to pause for a second because I need to cough. Okay, so let's move on. So you got the job offer on the 10th, Gabriella, and your recruiter hasn't got back with your start date. Should you be worried? I don't think you should be worried per se. I think the problem is, in some of these cases, your recruiter is trying to fill roles. So when they've actually filled one, it's like, oh, great, that one's done. And then they move on to the next role that hasn't yet been filled. And some of the work that has to be done in terms of, you know, um, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know what's wrong with me with my brain. It's not credit checks, background checks. There we go. Background checks, getting the contract issued, etc. Sometimes kind of fall away a little bit. So if you're not getting any joy with your recruiter, I would recommend reaching out to the hiring manager who hopefully you met through the interview process, because getting you bum on seat, as we used to say, and I suppose with RTO now it is now bum on seat, getting you bum on seat is going to be really important for that hiring manager. They've got you, they want you. So if you're not getting any response from the recruiter, I would head towards the hiring manager and politely say, super keen to join, super keen to join, having some kind of challenges in hearing back from said recruiter. I'm sure they're very, very busy. Is there anything that I need to do, Mrs. New Hiring Manager, to move this process forward? I'm super excited to join you. And because they will be super excited to have you, they will probably poke the recruiter to move forward with some of the other elements of the onboarding process. But I don't think you should worry. Okay. What is the appropriate length of stories? It usually says 6 to 7 minutes for L6, but is that too much? Okay, so we recommend that an L6 has about a 6-minute story. The reason we recommend it is Amazon's base recommendation is up to about 4 minutes. That's what they will say in some of their published content. The concerns that we have about this at Day One Careers is 4 minutes is based on the assumption that your interviewer will then ask you a whole bunch of follow-up questions and probably take the conversation somewhere up to about 7 or 8 minutes. If you bear in mind that you've got an hour's interview, if you only answered questions with 4 minutes, you would get through a hell of a lot of questions in a 60-minute interview. Actually, they're probably only aiming to get through 3 questions, maybe 4, right? So Amazon is thinking, okay, about 4 minutes, and then the rest will be filled with a backwards and forwards of questions from the interviewer themselves. Day One Careers, our recommendation is that you don't necessarily want to just leave it into the interviewer's hand to ask you the follow-up questions that are going to be important to get that information being important to get out on the table. You might have a bad interviewer, they exist. You might have a tired interviewer, you might have a distracted interviewer. We don't think that you should be entirely laying the ownership of your success at the feet of your interviewer. So we recommend that you go a little bit longer than Amazon's recommended length and make sure that all of the details that will help you demonstrate your strength at that particular leadership principle are automatically and proactively articulated by you to the interviewer. And then they either have less follow-up questions for you because you've covered it all off, or they might still have follow-up questions for you, but they might be broader set of follow-up questions or more sophisticated follow-up questions because they haven't had to use the easy follow-up questions because you've already proactively shared that information. That is our point of view. That doesn't mean to say that is the right answer. Okay, there is no right answer. There are ranges of answers and there are preferences. So we've tried to triangulate our recommendation based on Amazon's stated preference with then a little bit of additional logic placed on top. Oh, we got another winner. Hey, Vishali. So you were able to crack Amazon and our videos really helped a lot. Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you for coming on and saying that. I really can't overestimate how important and special it is to know that people are achieving their goals because of the work that we do. Even if you haven't bought anything from us, I don't care. I love to hear well, I do care. I need to feed my children. But if you haven't and you've still managed to get a job using our advice and guidance, it gives me purpose, makes me feel like my effort was worthwhile. So I'm very, very grateful that you've come here to say that. And I wish you the most fantastic Amazon career. Okay. I finished my loop last week for an SDM. Okay, software development manager, folks, if we didn't know. And you didn't get a full incline, was informed that the BR gave a 6-month recycle. Does this mean I can apply for another role only after 6 months? Yes. It does. It's super interesting because this is a slight aside, folks. November last year, I think it was, they issued a new policy at Amazon to try and bring together what is called the cooling off period, or you are recycled, because lots of people just had their own policy for how long they were going to do a recycle for, or how long the cooling off period was going to be for. And they are all supposed to be doing it for 12 months. I've seen the policy document, but no one's doing it. They're all coming up with their own anyway. So, yes, it does mean you can't apply again for 6 months. But because I know this policy exists, even if you apply again in 6 months, I'm not sure that there is a guarantee that you will be considered, because it's systematized now. It used to be, it was just kind of freehand typed in and you couldn't enforce it. I believe because of the implementation of this new process, it's now systematized that if a recruiter tries to put you onto their rec and you're a recycle, it will have the date of your previous interview and it won't allow you to apply. But I would say give it a go in 6 months' time. But if you're getting rejected, don't assume it's because you're not fit for the role. It might be because actually you're in a 12-month cooling off period rather than a 6-month cooling off period. I know it's all very confusing. I'm sorry. Okay, gonna move on to Prachi. Okay. Since your background is different, I usually Yeah. Oh, 3 minutes is a lot to explain the business context and the ecosystem. I agree that you do need to create some basic context for who I was working for, what they did, what my job title was, and the scope of my responsibilities. But 3 minutes for that seems excessive. You should be able to get that all summarized up at most in a minute. So, yes, I would definitely cut that down. Anything that you've got in that which isn't important to help the interviewer understand the rest of your story, cut out. So you could try asking yourself, if I remove this, does my story still make sense? Is the interviewer still going to understand the basics of what's going on here? If the answer is yes, get rid of it. Okay, moving on. Okay. Oh, Gabrielle again, right. I applied for an L6 role in my journey during the started in February. Okay, yes, it does. Sometimes it just takes a really long time. I have no excuses for you or reasons for you, Gabriella. So I understand that you're nervous, but you've got the go. Reach out to the hiring manager. They will have a lot of skin in the game. Okay. So who is exactly the customer in customer obsession if I'm applying for an account manager role? Amazon Business Advisory. Is it the end customer like normal people or sellers accounts that Amazon both. It will be both. So this is useful for everybody, actually. When they talk about customer obsession, it isn't necessarily an end customer, the user of the product. A customer is basically a customer of you. So anybody that is dependent on your output for them to be able to do their jobs is also a customer. So people who have roles that are both customer facing and supplier facing, they're trying to serve a customer by using a internal supplier, those people can both be your customers. If you are legal, you're in a legal organization, the end customer is more likely to be the person that you're servicing internally, who's relying on your legal advice in order to be able to do their job properly. Now, some legal people are working on consumer legal issues, so perhaps they could also have an end customer as well as their internal customer. But some people aren't. So, for example, some people are lawyers around estate purchases, let's say, retail estate purchases. There's no end customer there. The only end customer is the business unit that is trying to purchase that real estate. I hope that makes sense. Oh gosh, how many times did you ask that question, dude? A million times. How many times did you need to ask that question? Right, I'm scrolling. Right. Aditya. Okay. Oh, I have used your method to have cracked the interview and become an Amazonian. Okay. Oh, you want something about internal transfers, right? I can't really do a video about internal transfers because actually it's very, very different across different countries and across different business units. So I appreciate the sentiment as to why that might be useful, but actually I can't provide that insight in its totality because it varies enormously. All right, so folks, I am just going to see if there's one more question I can do because we are over time. But what I'm going to say is don't go because I'm going to give you an amazing freebie that you will absolutely love. So, all right, so I'm just going to pick this one and then we are going to give you the freebies. So Divya, hello. Okay, so what to expect from the first technical round? Okay, so if it's called a technical round, just assume technical, right? If they've literally given it the title of a technical round, prepare yourself for the technical aspects. If they haven't given it a title of technical round and it's just a first round, then you need to be prepared for either behavioral or technical. The best person to ask this question of is going to be your recruiter because every single team does things slightly different. Even if it is titled technical, some teams will approach technical in one way, some teams will approach technical in another way. So I really would go and ask your recruiter. They're the only person that can give you absolute clarity. Okay, so folks, as I said, I was going to give you a freebie. So here it is. If you go to this URL here, I will speed through this, I promise. If you go to this URL here, you will get access to three things that are really, really helpful. First thing is, as a few people have mentioned, we do sell a digital course, the Amazon Interview Success System, which basically helps you prepare from the standing start all the way to being prepared to walk through the door or chime, it's not even doors anymore, for your interview. We're going to give you a little free snippet of that course. This snippet is focused on customer obsession. So we explain to you what the different flavors of customer obsession are and exactly what your interviewers are looking for from customer obsession. So for the person who was asking earlier how you come up with stories, well, I can give you this and this will help you come up with your customer obsession stories and help you write them. It also includes kind of a mock interview, me interviewing me, just to show you how it might be in the interview. But the other stuff is probably the more important stuff. That's the first thing. Second thing you can get is something we call the Amazon Interview Preparation Tool Pack, lovely pithy title. There's a couple of models in there, but the most useful thing in there is a big list of plausible Amazon interview questions. They're not the exact Amazon interview questions. I can't give you those, but I know what the Amazon interviewers are looking for well enough to be able to come up with my own version that will be definitely good enough for you to practice on. Don't expect to hear them at the interview, you won't, but they're near enough that they will be very useful for practice. If you take either of those, it gives you access to our Heartbeat community, where you can meet other potential Amazonians and people who are interviewing, and you can buddy up and do mock interviews between you. The other thing it does is in the Heartbeat community is that ChatGPT model that is trained on everything in the YouTube channel. So if you have questions, you can literally just ask that chatbot, Andy, funnily enough, and Andy will give you the answer if it exists in the YouTube channel. And it's just a lot quicker way of getting access to information than trawling through the whole YouTube channel. So that is it. Thank you very, very much for your attendance, folks, and really, really great questions. Sorry, I kind of no break myself without Yevgeny, but I hope it was useful. For those of you who did land roles, again, massive congratulations and really thank you for taking the time to come and tell me. I feel lifted. For those of you who have interviews coming up, I have my fingers very, very tightly crossed for you. If you do have further questions of me, do feel free just to go to the YouTube channel and drop those questions in the comment section under any of the videos. I check it every single day and I will probably respond within 24 or 48 hours. Thanks, everyone. Please, please take care of yourselves. Every single week I say look after yourselves in this crazy world, and then the following week it gets even crazier. So I will keep saying it. Please take care of yourselves and your families and your friends, and hopefully I will maybe see you next week. Take care. Bye.